Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. I am your host, Maria Gonçalves, and today we have a special guest. We have Tom Barrow, all the way from the UK and the creator of Inspector Paranormal. There you go. And we got our co-host, Dana Louise, all the way from Australia. So welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me again. Looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, me too.
And then I'm just going to read the show notes that you have for the podcast. So I'm just going to put my glasses on for a minute. So, okay. So Inspector Paranormal shines a light deep into the dark corners of the world of the unexplained and investigates some very strange ghostly phenomena. Each episode features the firsthand spoken testimonies from real-life witnesses who've experienced some baffling and terrifying encounters. And in each episode, host Tom Barrow takes on a brand new case and is joined by a team of experts who will be putting their best historical, spiritual, skeptical minds forward to try and figure out what happened. No case will be too odd, strange, or baffling to explain. And Tom you have an incredible team here. So you have the world-renowned psychic medium, Jackie Dennison, who is also on Rescue Mediums. You have your skeptic, Tom Peach.
Page, that's right. Yeah,
Peach.
That's right.
Sorry. And your historian, Ellie. Is it Eli?
Eli.
Eli Lachette. I apologize, didn't say that right, but thank you for correcting me.
Don't worry, every day's a school day. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
I love it. So how did you find these people? Did you just like wake up one morning and you're like, I'm going to grab these three people to do it with me?
Well, they're all from my hometown, weirdly enough. It's kind of so strange that we all live in this town called Northwich, which is kind of not, if the listeners know the north of England at all, Manchester and Liverpool. So it's kind of halfway in between those two big cities. So I've known of Jackie for years because she's always been in the local paper, but I've not known her personally. But obviously with all her stuff that she's done with Rescue Mediums and stuff like that. So when I was kind of thinking of the project, I was like, I'd like to get a medium, and she's like the David Beckham of mediums. So so I was like, I would love to get her. So I dropped her an email and said, would you be interested? And she's a very busy lady. She's always like, I think she's always in Japan doing her TV show over there, but she was more than happy to kind of get involved. And then Eli kind of is another local historian as well. So he kind of lives about 3 miles away. So he's fantastic as well. He kind of is great at kind of finding all these little trinkets of history that that are sometimes unknown as well. And then Tom, who is our skeptic, he's a friend of a friend. I wanted like an everyday kind of guy, like who you would meet in the pub, and it would be like the person that would be like, no, I call this on this, or I'm saying it's not this, or so. I think that's what I kind of wanted, because on a lot of TV shows you have like the skeptic's always like a university professor or the university educated, but I wanted like an everyman to kind of, for the listener to kind of say, well, he's got a point there. Or no, I think he's kind of being a bit too extreme on his opinions. So I think that's the beauty of the show, is like the paranormal is so kind of vast and wide that you don't have to have or believe certain things. If you believe this, it's fine. If you don't believe this, it's also fine as well. So I think that's the beauty of the show. It kind of lets the listener make their own mind up on what the cases are and stuff.
I love that.
So, yes. Tom, can I ask, what sort of piqued your interest? Why paranormal podcast? And I've read that you've got a history in journalism, very impressive resume, actually. So what turned your mind towards wanting to cover the paranormal?
I think I've always had a fascination for it, really. So I think as a kid, like I loved like the X-Files and stuff like that. And even like I'd go to my local library and I'd sort of get out the same library ghost book over and over and over and over again, because I think I just was fascinated to know that obviously these things had happened to people, or they've been reported to happen to people, but why? And I think that you can very much well read about a fictional account of ghosts like Freddy Krueger or horror film or whatnot, but these are real and these have happened to real life people, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, could that happen to you as well? So it's and again, a lot of these things are kind of unreported. So I kind of got into it by I think it was about 6 years ago. I had an experience walking down the canal not far from where I live. So it's a place that I go all the time. So I go jogging there, I go running, take the dog for a walk there, go there all the time. And there's nothing special about this place. It's the opposite of where a lot of keepers' cottages is. So if you know the canals of England, they were kind of built about 200 years ago. So they always have like one towpath because that's where they, in the olden days, that's where the horses would kind of take the canal boats up and down. And then obviously they were kind of made redundant by the trains and all that kind of stuff in the Industrial Revolution. But nowadays they're kind of used as holiday makers and stuff like that. But on the opposite side of this canal, me and my friend were walking back to my house. It was August, it was getting 9 o'clock at night. But on the opposite side of the canal, there was this, I thought it was a fisherman. And as we got closer, this like glowing sort of figure, because you know when they wear high vis gear and stuff, and I was like, oh, what's a fisherman doing, like getting dark across the opposite side of the canal? As we got closer, I shone my flashlight, and it was no fisherman. It was like a glowing sort of Victorian woman. But me and my friend were like, well, we weren't kind of in a paranormal state of mind. We weren't talking about ghosts. We hadn't kind of scared ourselves up into anything. We were just like, mate, did you see that? And he's like, my mate, and obviously my mate was there at the same time. My friend was there, and he said the exact same thing as me. We were like, yeah, mate, that's a ghost. And I shone the torch across the opposite side of the canal, and this kind of, the best way to describe it, it looked like a Victorian washerwoman with big sort of clothes, and like she was pegging something, pegging or washing. Shone the torch, flashlight, and she kind of faded away. And I was like, okay. And so as I ran back home, and obviously when you kind of take it apart and kind of think about it, it's like, who do you tell about this kind of stuff? You can't really tell the press. You can't really broadcast it on like social media because you might be seen as being crazy and stuff. So I think this is my kind of way of kind of trying to help or kind of investigate other people's experiences. And obviously with having Jackie as the specialist medium, Eli as the historian, and Tom as the skeptic, it kind of investigates other people's experiences and tries to shed a bit of light onto what they might have experienced as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do have these experiences, but they don't talk about them as such, do they? They might have the in-house with friends or family, but so many people have them. And I know people that I see will say, oh, no, I don't believe in that. And they go, oh, well, there was a time when. And everyone seems to have a story, don't they? Which is why I loved listening to the podcast when you're covering just ordinary real people. It's not so much a location where they're doing ghost tours, but particularly that episode with I think it was your friends, Claire and Ash.
Oh yeah, Winnington Phantom. Yeah, episode
Yeah.
2.
Would you mind just telling the listeners just about that episode? Because I found that quite fascinating with the axe
Yes.
story.
Well, that was one of the stories that kind of got me into it because they told me this story all these years ago, and I partially witnessed some of it myself. They lived in this house. In England, we have terrace houses, so long lines of houses, and probably and they lived at the end of this terraced house. So it's just like a what we'd call like a two up, two down. So you'd have two stories, two rooms at the bottom, two rooms at the top, that kind of thing, and they were kind of built in the Victorian age, so kind of the early 1900s. But my friends had lived there. They lived there for about a fair amount of years. So it's not your usual kind of ghost story where people move in and next minute things start to happen. They lived there for a while, but they made some changes to the house. I think they did something to the bathroom, and they kind of knocked a door through and made it more habitable for them. And basically, they started to experience some strange stuff. They heard footsteps in the night, and I actually went round, I think it was maybe a few months after things had started to kick off, and me and my friend were sat talking to one another in the the way the rooms are set up, it's like a living room, and then it's like it joins onto like a dining room, but the dining room's always kind of in the dark, and the living room is always in the light type thing. And her partner Ash was sat on the chair facing the darkened room, and he saw a set of legs kind of walk across. But the way he reacted, he ran to where the fireplace was and grabbed his axe. But me and my friend hadn't seen any of this. We were like, what is going on? Because he's just ran up, grabbed this axe, and then he ran out of the house, opened the door, and is looking around with this axe. And we're like, what is going on? But then he came back and then he said, I saw a set of legs walk through the house. I thought someone was in the house. So I think that's the first thing you kind of go to. You don't kind of think it's a ghost in the house. You go, it's a person. But obviously, those kind of impossible things kind of come in play. Well, the door's locked. We're the only people in the house, so it's kind of that kind of thing. But it was scary, and the scariest thing that my friend Claire had is like it calmed down a bit, and then she was getting ready to go to work one day in the morning. Her partner Ash had gone to work an hour before. So she's there having a toast, getting the keys, ready to go to work. She goes to the front door. She's about to turn the front key. And she said in the corner of her eye, she saw a face looking at her. And she was like, she's trying to open the door to try and get out of the house. She doesn't want to look at this face, but then it kind of disappeared. And what do you kind of say to that? Like, you can't say you're crazy. You can't say this or that. So it was one of their stories that they only kind of kept to themselves. But when they told me and all stuff I experienced there, it was kind of, I thought a lot more people kind of needed to know about it as well. So that's kind of one of the reasons why it's in the podcast, really.
Well, you can't ignore it when you actually witness it, can you, Tom? So you've got that behind you as you further investigate in the series, that truth seeking, like what's the truth of this situation, or at least create that understanding. Marie, did you have a question for Tom?
I am curious. Have you had your own experiences growing up with spirit or living in a haunted house or?
I think I've always wanted to experience something. I think the weirdest thing, like, and this is like a childhood memory, is this is in my best friend's house, who lives probably 2 doors down from me, and he lived in like a Victorian kind of end terrace house. Again, me, probably when I was about 8 years old, and he was probably about 7, and his brother was there as well. He was probably about 6. We were kind of play fighting in the study, so we obviously like Power Rangers or Turtles, whichever was the biggest fad at the time. But we were throwing cushions, jumping on the couches, and we shut the study door, and we were all like kind of hot and sweaty. And we were like, okay, let's kind of have some juice or some drinks downstairs. We went to go and open the door, and the door, it was partially ajar, shut, and we were like, hang on a minute. So one of them grabbed the door, and then the door shut again. And so then all 3 of us were there, like pulling it, and then the door kind of finally gave way. But it was as if someone was on the other side, and it wasn't as if it was stuck, and it was kind of due to kind of heat or whatever. It was as if there was some give and take on the door, as if someone was holding it on the other side. And it's one of those things that, like, and a lot of people have these stories where they don't know, they kind of put it in the back of their mind as a child, and then it's stored there, but then it takes like a few kind of things to kind of jolt it back to life, and you're like, oh, actually that happened to me as well. But a lot of people, they don't kind of don't know how to kind of process it, so it's kind of left there as like a kind of a raw memory, really. So and a few of them, we're kind of working on series 2 at the moment, and there's one story which is pretty scary, which kind of involves a person who I met on a Facebook group, and I've kind of interviewed her and stuff, and she experienced something very strange. She said as a child, she went to bed one night and she saw, it gives me the chills, but she saw a figure with two red eyes staring at her at the bottom of the bed. And I said to her, "Were you awake?" And she's like, "Yes." "Were you dreaming?" She's like, "No, I was not dreaming. I was wide awake. I remember it vividly." And that kind of stuff kind of sticks in your memory, really, doesn't it? But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But that's going to be still editing all that stuff at the moment, so that's going to be probably, I said February next year, but I think it's going to be March. I think so. Yeah.
I think I would be terrified of the two red eyes staring at me in the middle of the night. But I remember even for myself, my first home I bought, it was weird because the woman, she was an elderly woman. Her husband had passed away in the house, and then she moved to an apartment building and she had a little cat, but she wasn't allowed to bring the cat with her. So I was like, okay, bought my first home, and we had a cat. But every night I would get in touch with my sister and my family. So I would be downstairs in the basement, and every day in the evening, the front door would open. I would hear footsteps, the fridge would open, close, then the footsteps would go back, and the door would close again. So then I'd be like to my sister, "You came in my house and you didn't even talk to me?" Because we all live like across the street from each other, like in the neighborhood. And she'd be like, "No, no, I didn't do that." And I would go up to my parents, "You guys came over, you didn't even like come downstairs in the basement?" Because here in Canada, we have like rec rooms, like TV rooms in the basement. But
Oh,
that
okay.
happened for years, and then I found out when her husband passed away, then it stopped. But it's like, is that haunted? I don't know. I just got used to the footsteps. I was like, "Okay, he's here. He'll be gone in 60 seconds. Don't worry."
Did he go into the fridge? Was anything taken from the fridge, or is it always
No,
just?
it was open the front door because of the little house, the hallway, 15 steps, go to the kitchen, open the door to the kitchen, not to the kitchen, to the fridge, close it, and then walk back out. I feel like he's like looking for his wife, but she had moved and he had
Oh,
passed
wow.
away in the house. And then I remember telling her that I go, "I think your husband visits me every day in the house." And she would come over, like, I stayed friends with the little lady that used to own the house, so she'd come over for tea every week, but it would never happen for her. I was like, "I guess you have to be in the basement for it to happen." But it wasn't
Yeah.
scary, I just got used to it. It's like, "It's what happens in my house." Ignore the front door being open. We
Well,
are
everyone's got their stories, haven't they? Like even
Yeah.
Marie, you've got a story. So doesn't that just highlight how many untold stories and experiences are out there? So Tom,
Totally.
I think
Yeah.
this will be a never-ending podcast that you're running.
I
There's
hope
no
so.
doubt
I hope so.
you'll stumble upon a lot more stories just in the area that you're in. And talking of that, Tom, I know you said that a lot of the contacts that are actually on the podcast are in your local area, but are you moving out further and for the investigations, or is it all happening, online because it's,
Yeah.
are
Well,
you
I
going
think.
in person?
Well, with series one, we were kind of lucky because um, everyone in series one was more or less based in my home county. So, but then a couple of the stories were they now live in Cheshire, but then they might have lived in this other place many years ago, and that's where the things happened. But this time, I actually did go and I visited a couple of locations. So, one place that obviously is going to be the Hack Green Halloween special. So that's a place that it's a nuclear bunker, which originally it used to be it was built during the Second World War as like a radar facility. So it was like an RAF base, but it was kept secret. So no one in the local town knew about it. It was in the middle of the countryside, kind of kept secret. But then during the Cold War, it was converted into a nuclear bunker, and there's lots of secrets there. And I think when they say it's connected to the land as well, it's got a dark past. So they had like the English Civil War battle took there as well. So the Roundheads and the Cavaliers the type thing happened there. There's also a connection to witchcraft. So it's a relatively modern building, but when me and I think it was built about 80 years ago, but when me and my friend Carla went there and we interviewed this lady called Bryony who works there at the museum now, um, we were the only ones in the building. It's got these massive sort of metal blast doors, and we were walking around on a little tour, and in this one dormitory room, and I heard footsteps behind me, and I was like, "There's no one in this building. It's just three people in this military structure that no one else is here." And how on earth can you kind of explain any of that away? And then when we were kind of recording in the canteen kitchen area upstairs, um, Bryony heard someone kind of open one of the doors as well. So yeah, it's very scary. But for series two, though, we're kind of I've kind of expanded out of my home county of Cheshire, so we've gone to Wales. So it's not as far; it's only the next county along. But we've got some stories from Wales, and also we've got some stories from Lancashire as well. So some very sort of some of them they might not be like ooh scary, but some of them are very much like that's just weird. Like, and there's no explanation for it, but I'm sort of very sort of pleased of how kind of the story's kind of naturally kind of getting bigger and bolder and stuff like that. So yeah, watch this space for series two. I'm really really sort of proud of it so far. But yeah, I think I'll let you guys be the verdict. But yeah, I'm really pleased with it.
I can't wait. When you guys did like the Halloween special, does your whole team go down with you or it's just you?
No, it's just me. It's just me. Or it kind of it depends on the person's story, because that's for me that's the person who's the star of the show. Whereas like I think if you kind of watch like a lot of like ghost trip investigations or kind of the YouTube investigation type stuff, I've got nothing against that kind of stuff, but that's not really my forte. And I mean, me and the historian were kind of over talking because we were at a paranormal conference on Saturday, and we kind of said the kind of the YouTuber kind of ghost investigation stuff. It's great if you're the person on the investigation kind of going around the haunted place, but if you're a person at home having to watch an hour's worth of a YouTube video where might and a lot of stuff might not happen, it's kind of not as interesting. But so I think I always found out the most interesting stuff for me is always it's the people's stories. That's where these people are not kind of looking for ghosts. They're just living their day-to-day lives, and the world of the paranormal is kind of thrust upon them. So I kind of find that stuff more fascinating. I find like the people that kind of go hunting for ghosts, kind of there's nothing wrong with that, and sometimes they might have a great story, but the ones which kind of the more interesting stuff personally to me are the ones who just they go to work, they live in their houses, and these things happen to them, and they're not asking for it. So yeah, I find those things kind of more scary and more, not to say more believable, but kind of more genuine, I'd say.
Yeah. I always find it interesting. Everything ends in footsteps. Do you notice that?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and there was the footsteps. But for Saturday, because you guys had an event just this weekend, correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
an event called Paracon. So it's the first event I've ever sort of been to. But it was great to kind of meet people from kind of the whole kind of paranormal world. So there were mediums there. Jackie was there. She had some kind of aura camera where it takes a picture of your aura,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. And there were some kind of YouTubers there as well. So it's kind of great to kind of see who was there. But they had I don't know if you guys have heard of the occult family. So they're kind of, I think they've been on TV programs. So they're kind of like a modern day Adams family. So
Ooh.
the kids get involved as well, but they dress for the part. So obviously everything's in black. I think they've got a hearse that they drive around and stuff like that. So they were really good speakers. But then have you guys ever seen a program called Most Haunted in the UK?
Oh,
No, I haven't.
No.
It starred Vet Fielding. It was kind of big in the noughties, so it's one of the first major ghost programs, kind of started off all the other ghost programs really. But they had an historian there called Richard Felix there as well. He was like the big ticket item really on the day. So it was really good to kind of see him as well and watch them speak as well. Yeah, it was a good day.
Did you guys get to speak too?
Yeah, yeah. They put us on they put us on last, but obviously it's a long day, so obviously we're not as big ticket items as kind of the other people really. So there were kind of less people around. Not to say the cleaners there kind of coming around, but we were kind of the very last speakers on the day. So, but we kind of did really well. I think that people really kind of like listen to our stories, and we kind of gave like a preview of the Halloween special coming up as well. So yeah, it was good.
Oh, that sounds
So,
awesome.
sorry, Tom, I was going to ask, what's the feedback locally? Because you said the four really all come from the same area. I'm just wondering how the locals take what you're doing. I
Um,
know when I post anything here and it goes out into other areas, and I'm just recently posting, I'll get the witch or the devil's daughter. And so I'm just curious
uh, no,
what the
well,
response is in your area.
I think it's been very positive. I think people like the whole sort of local history kind of vibe as well from obviously the first episode I did was like set in one of my local pubs. So that's kind of where the publicity kind of got involved with, like the local paper got involved with it, kind of telling about the podcast and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think there's much kind of not sort of negativity or kind of anything like that really. But I think as it gets bigger and better, but I think a few people have kind of stopped me and said, "Oh, Tom, you're into the paranormal and stuff like that." And I kind of say to them, "Well, I am to a degree. I'm not kind of any sort of expert. I'm just kind of the producer and kind of presenter behind it. But I do kind of have an interest in it, and I think again it comes to like that thing where you kind of take what you want from the paranormal. You don't have to believe everything. Like I think one thing I'm not really keen on is when I don't know what the speaker boxes. I'm not too sure on that. So we know where
Yeah.
they go into a room and then it starts to kind of say random words. Part of me is like, I'm not quite sure on that. Obviously, if you believe that or someone else believes that, then that's fine. But then again, there's no right or wrong, which is
Mm.
great, really. You can believe what you want to believe, and obviously, you could try and apply a certain amount of logic to the paranormal, but sometimes it sticks, sometimes it goes off in a whole other kind of direction and it can lead you places that you kind of might not think you were going to go to, but yeah, it will kind of open your eyes and things as well.
Oh, that is so cool. Here in Canada, we're all about the paranormal. Like I think at one point there was a TV show called Creepy Canada, and I'm just like based Toronto, just outside Toronto. We have like haunting tours. Do they have that there? Now I'm just curious.
Yeah, the haunted kind of tourism thing has kind of kicked off massively, probably in the last 10 years, I'd say. I think um originally it used to kind of just be over Halloween and stuff, but nowadays you get there's kind of various places, kind of including Hat Green as well, which kind of gets a lot of ghost tourism. So not necessarily people going on their own little groups, but kind of booking tickets to kind of spend the night till show up at 10 o'clock and then stay there till 3 a.m. and kind of see what you can find type thing. But yeah, I think because there's quite, I think in England, we kind of take our history for granted sometimes because we're like, oh, there's a castle. And we're just kind of like, we're kind of castled for days, if that makes sense. Whereas um, I think we do take our history for granted, but yeah, there's so much of it. Like the town where I live, there's it kind of goes back to the Romans, but obviously no one kind of thinks that. But obviously there's kind of Roman burial sites and Roman walls and that kind of thing. And I live not far from the town of Chester as well, so that's like an ancient Roman city with kind of walls around it and stuff like that. But yeah, you kind of just walk past and you don't really think about it too much, really.
That is so true. Like, I'm originally from Portugal, so when we would go back on vacation to Portugal, family would be like, "And let's go look at a castle," and be like, "Another one?
Yeah.
Another castle?" So I get the whole castle thing. I think that's so fascinating what you do. So now I'm like super curious, how does your family respond to it? Do they love the paranormal too?
Far from it. No, my mum and dad, they not I think they're firm skeptics, and probably my sister is as well, but that's fine. Like I think as a kid, I'd always wanted to kind of impress my parents, and I think that they are proud of me and stuff like that because of all the stuff I've done as well, like graduated from university and all that kind of stuff. But um, this kind of stuff is like they're like, oh, you're doing that now. But then I've shown them the podcast, and they might not listen to all of it, but I think they're kind of proud of me either way. I think, which is nice. But yeah, they don't get it, and I think my friends are kind of into it, but then again, it's some people are kind of really into it, and I think when we went to this Paracon thing, you can kind of tell the really sort of diehard ones, which will kind of believe everything, whereas like for me, I'm kind of I don't believe everything, but I am a sort of very open to most things and stuff really, and I think as long as there's kind of some kind of scientific basis behind it. Um, but then again, I am open to kind of say that there's some things that science can't explain. So yeah, it's but yeah, but my dad's a firm skeptic, I'm afraid.
A supporter, so I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's very impressive, Tom, the way you've put that together. It's very easy listening, but there's no visual to it, but you can literally picture what's happening. So you've done it in such a way that the story really comes alive.
Thank you so much. I really like that the it lets you paint the picture in your own head and that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
it's like
And
reading a good book.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I really appreciate that. It takes a lot of time, a lot of editing, and getting sound effects, and
Oh,
sometimes
I could imagine.
the sound effects that you want kind of don't sound like what like at Hat Green at the moment. They have these turnstiles, but obviously I can't go to the museum and kind of record them, so I'm like searching for sound effects websites and stuff and I can't find it. But then I kind of search for microwave door opening, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a turnstile. So then obviously I kind of use that snippet in there, but it just takes a while to kind of get that. But yeah, I kind of like to take the listeners on a journey and also kind of scare them a little bit as well, or kind of not to kind of terrify them, but kind of make them kind of, oh, shall I leave the lights on if I'm listening to this, or shall I listen to this during the day, or that kind of stuff. I think that's the power of a podcast as well. It lets you kind of use your imagination.
That's so funny because I was listening to some of the episodes last night and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the dark and now I'm actually scared. So I had to turn the lights on because of the music. Like you have like some really creepy music, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know what's gonna happen," but I seriously need some lights on.
Or you kind of it's like if you watch something scary before you go to bed, I'm like, I have to watch Family Guy, or I have to watch something really non-scary before I can go to bed, that kind of cancels it out. Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, because you have like the music's amazing and the way you put it together. And for those that are watching, if you want to get really scared, listen to it at night in the dark when you're in bed, because you will
Yeah.
get terrified.
I think as well, because I edit it so much, I'm kind of used to it. I've kind of become a bit immune to it. So
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing because you listen to it so many times, so editing and going in your head. But yeah, if you come to something like really scary, it can stick in your mind. Like, and it goes back to that whole kind of childhood thing as well. It's like if you cast back to when you were a kid and you'd watch a TV program or a film that had a scary bit in it, and it might not have necessarily been intended to be a horror film. It might have been like something from a character from a kid's show, but it sticks in your mind, and those things are terrifying.
Yes, they are.
But I did love the balance that you've created too, though, Tom, with, you've got Jackie, and she's a really grounded medium. So she doesn't buy everything and she rejects some stuff. There's that common sense approach, which I love, and which comes through in the actual presentation of each episode. I can see that very practical, balanced. I mean, how does your journalism affect the way you do the podcast?
I think it's just trying to give it kind of a balanced kind of take on things, really. I don't think you want to kind of make it so that is a ghost, that is a ghost, that is a demon. You kind of want to make the people kind of make their own mind up, really. And I think that's the beauty of it. I always kind of have something where if I give one piece of evidence, I might have something to kind of counteract that as well. But then there's some stuff which you kind of listen into and you're like the skeptic Tom, like we always joke that he always goes on, we call him the mold man, because he always says that, oh, it's mold because mold kind of causes like
UK's covered in mold, according to your podcast.
That's not true.
Everyone's got some delirium.
But I think a lot of the times he kind of does struggle sometimes to kind of think of something that obviously they've not heard of before to kind of counter that. But I think in this series, especially for the Halloween one, he kind of has got a few more credible things which he does kind of pulls out of the bag with, and kind of says to people, it could be this, and you're like, you have got a point there. It's not necessarily mold, but obviously it is a bunker. It's 80 years old. Mold is gonna be in place in some way. But then again, like, we've all lived in student flats or student accommodations where sorry,
we've lost you.
That's okay.
Tour of the house. Not
Sorry,
paranormal activity. Explainable.
Hang on, I'll just show you. The dog is just like that's better. She stood on my
That's okay.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a cocker spaniel. 1 second.
Those are cute.
Oh, an English cocker spaniel. What are you eating?
Goodness. Hi, sweetie. Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a girl.
And what's her name?
She's eating something. Her name is Ellie.
Ellie. So, hi, Ellie. She's so.
I'll put it there.
Maybe she ate a sock. Hopefully not a sock.
Oh, she's eating
a little bit
something.
of a distraction.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Tom, I was going to ask, I was thinking that this skeptic Tom of yours has actually got a bit of a tough gig, because as the season goes on and he's being presented with more, and perhaps even if he goes out, and as you said, you're traveling out now and you're going out to these sites, and if Tom, as a friend of a friend, is accompanying you, I think it's going to be very difficult for him moving forward to maintain that skepticism.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy to be skeptic until we have it proven otherwise, isn't it?
I agree. And I think Tom, he doesn't want to kind of, he's very opinionated, but he doesn't want to be nasty about it as well. So he kind of, sometimes you can see he wants to make a really sarcastic comment, but he's like, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to be very sort of demure and kind of be respectable, and the way he kind of says it. But I think it's great having that kind of balanced act, really.
Oh, absolutely.
And as you said, Jackie is very much like, she's not straight away going, that's a ghost, that's paranormal activity. She's like, is that the boiler? Does the boiler come on at a certain time at night? Is it the pipes? Is it this? Is it the wind? Is it a car? She's very much like, she'd happily go to those things first, then go to a ghost. But then obviously whatever's left is then, it could be a ghost. Yeah. So she's fab. She's kind of a really great asset to the team, I'd say.
Oh, yes, she definitely is. Even back to that pub, I think one of the podcasts I was listening to at the pub about, taps going on, toilets, flushings. She didn't jump to the history of the place or the spirit. She automatically went systematically through a process of common sense, really, And then once that was ruled out, had different thoughts about it, which I thought was fabulous.
Thank you. Thanks. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I love the way she does that. So I don't know, I have like a million questions going on in my mind because now I'm thinking of Tom the skeptic, and I feel like by the end, Tom's going to be a believer. I don't know. I think the listeners were like, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, will he ever be a believer? I find that fascinating.
Well, he was scared to go to the paranormal convention on Saturday because I think he thought he was going to be lynched. I think because obviously he's got a firm mindset of what he believes. So I think he just thought, well, I'm not going to go because I'm going to cause aggravation or whatever. But I don't think he would do. But it's kind
No.
of it's just knowing what to say, or if you don't believe in something, that's fine. You don't have to believe in it. But obviously, it's kind of how you kind of um manage yourself or how you kind of portray yourself, really. So it's one of those things.
I love the
That's right.
way you put the cast together because as I was listening to the episodes, I love Tom because he is a skeptic and he's like, well, there could be mold. Well, it could be this. And then it gets me to think like, because I'm like, oh my God, it's got to be a ghost. And he's like, no, no, no. What about this? And then with that, oh, what's his name? Eli, with the history. Like, what's his background? Because he does like the historian stuff.
Yeah, so he's kind of like me. So he's kind of like both work normal 9 to 5 sort of day jobs or whatever, but then at the weekends or in the evenings and stuff, that's when our kind of passions sort of take over. So he's a history buff. He's fab, Eli. He's kind of got a sort of historical background. So he's written for magazines and he's written for haunted magazines, which I think you guys can get in the US and Australia. But he's written columns for them. But he's great. But he kind of puts that unknown bit of history kind of gives that a spotlight. So especially with he kind of finds stuff out which you didn't know. And going back to that Winnington house with the axe and stuff, one of the stories goes that Claire and Ash, the two people that lived in the house, they would always kind of say, oh, we think there's a ghost here. We'd talk to the armchair and we'd call her Peggy. I don't know why we called her Peggy. We just gave her a nickname. And then I then kind of put that to Eli, and when we were doing the podcast, I said to him, Eli, like, it's a bit strange, but who lived in the house? And he was like, well, Bob lived here, Margaret lived here, Gary lived here. And I said to him, well, did a Peggy live here? And he says, hang on a minute. Margaret is a nickname for Peggy, or Peggy's a nickname for Margaret. So I was like, oh my God. So obviously, Margaret had lived in the house, and obviously that was the nickname for Peggy. So the people were right all along, and they were just calling a ghost that gave it a nickname, and they were historically correct. There was a Peggy that lived there. So when he said that, I had like chills, and it's that kind of great history kind of backs up the
What's the
stories as
evidence
well.
behind the experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
When he can narrow it down and actually say, well, this happened, that happened, and this is, connection. I think that's fantastic because as mediums, when we're doing this, we're always looking for the evidence to prove that we have, loved ones and spirits. So it's much the same way, but in a different way, but getting the historian involved. Tom, I had to ask, now season 1 was from episodes 1 to 7. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So season 2, what can your listeners expect in season 2?
Season 2. We've actually got I think there's going to be 10 episodes. So I've got my work cut out for me, but there's going to be 2 double parters. So we've got obviously the Red Eyes one, which is kind of the mystery one. So I won't kind of give too many spoilers for that one, but we've got our first ever UFO episode as well, which should be exciting. So that's going to be looking at around UFO sightings in Manchester Airport. So there was a famous case in the 90s where pilots kind of saw this UFO coming back from I think they were flying from Milan to Manchester, and they were about to land at the airport, and they saw this like Christmas tree kind of whiz past, like it looked like a triangle shape kind of whiz past, and they're like, what is that? We need to report that. So obviously it went on the near miss log, and obviously the press got involved then. And obviously sometimes pilots are a bit dubious of reporting stuff. But then I got involved and kind of talking with this UFO group in England and in the Northwest, and this guy called Ash I kind of said to him, have there been any other incidents in Manchester Airport? And he says, well, there was a Christmas tree, another Christmas tree, and a recent account as well. So that was only about probably 3 years ago. So someone else saw a Christmas tree, but it wasn't, like traditional UFOs are kind of like triangles on their side and they kind of hover. This was like kind of hovering like a Christmas tree. It's like glowing at the top and stuff. So yeah, very, very strange. But then we've also got some cases at a haunted theatre not far away from in a place called Warrington, not far away from where I live. That's going to be the opener of season 2. And then we've got a person called, I've forgotten his name already. I recorded them all in the summer. But he actually lives in a haunted house where they've seen the ghost of a child. But then he kind of told me the story, and then he kind of talked about what his childhood was. Again, it goes back to your childhood, living in this farm in Yorkshire, and he had some very sort of scary instances. And I think he even I think it was involving obviously I don't want to give too much away, but involving a maid that was murdered, and then it appeared in the history book, and he was like, oh my God, we were right. Again, that history context again is very important. But yeah, loads of stuff going on. But obviously I don't want to kind of give too many spoilers away, but yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. Totally.
Oh, it does sound exciting. And our listeners and viewers are just going to have to wait. So when does the first episode of season 2 drop? Do you know yet?
I think it's going to be March, so I'm not sure of the exact date yet. I think it's going to be probably early March, because like last year we launched in late February, so I think early March. Yeah, I'd say so. But then I think it just takes a while to kind of, because the recording process is like I need to record the witnesses, then I needed to then pass that on to Jackie, Eli, and Tom to kind of listen to, and then I've got to then record Jackie, Tom, and Eli separately as well. So it's that kind of thing, and then I've got to edit them together, edit the sound effects. So it's quite a long process. I think if it was just kind of, well, a lot of the podcasts these days are just kind of people reading ghost stories that people have submitted, but obviously I don't mind them, but I think that's probably what makes ours probably a bit more interesting, is obviously it's come from those people who've witnessed it. It kind of makes it a bit more interesting when they sort of say it out loud what they kind of saw or kind of experienced, really.
Yeah. I yeah, I agree. I totally agree, because it's like, well, just the way you put it together. So yes, it takes forever, I think, to do the work that you do, because when we listen to it, it sounds very easy, but behind the scenes, hours and hours and days and months have gone into creating each one of those episodes, and you bring it to life. And then another thing I was going to ask you, are you guys going to be in more shows? Like, can people go out and meet you?
I'd like to, yeah. I think it's just trying to kind of see what kind of audience would kind of suit us, because obviously we're a podcast, so we kind of go to a podcast convention? Would we go to like a horror convention? Because obviously we're kind of not to say an entertainment program, but we are kind of like a stories program. So obviously, but with that true thing. But then also we've got the paranormal convention side as well. But I think the paranormal convention that was last week was the first of its kind in the UK. So, but there are kind of horror cons as well. But obviously, this time of year, that's when it's kind of you've got to book years and months in advance. So I'd really like to do a horror convention or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. Watch this space, really.
Oh, that is so
I
cool.
was going to ask, when you find these people to places to do their stories, I mean, how in the future do you have other ideas of perhaps taking stories from overseas? That perhaps there might be a listener that has a story that's worth investigating.
Yeah.
Is there a way they can get in contact with you to share their story, so at least you can veto the story as such that it's plausible for a podcast?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is the technology gets easier and easier every year to kind of record, and especially the quality of recording. So you imagine if we did this maybe 5 years ago, it would all be very glitchy, and the imagery that would be very potatoey and stuff like that. But nowadays that you could be in the next room kind of recording this kind of stuff. So yeah.
That's right.
But I think obviously it might depend on how far we can stretch our historian to kind of, because obviously the historian is just knows local knowledge and stuff like that. But I'm sure if we could challenge Eli to stuff, then he'd be up for it. And also I think Jackie and Tom would be up for it as well. I'd love to kind of do some traveling with it, but obviously a lot of it is, I think the beauty of radio is like you can get stuff done on a really, really tight budget. If imagine if we did this for TV,
Oh, yes.
it would cost millions and stuff, or even or like thousands. But I think with radio, we kind of plot the dotted points along, and then you kind of create the pictures and events in your head, really. So I think that's the beauty of radio. But yeah, and watch this space. If you've got any stories in Australia or Canada, then yeah, we'd love to kind of hear from listeners out there. So yeah, but you can
I'll
go
see what I
contact.
can find.
Yeah, if you go to, is it www.inspectorparanormal.com, and then you can find us on there, or if you go to via Google or via Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can normally find the podcast through there, and then find the show notes and all that kind of stuff through that, really.
And then just, I want to say thank you so much for being with us, because I've learned so much. It's been such an exciting conversation. You guys are also on Instagram. You're on Facebook, Apple Podcasts. On your Instagram, you actually have a link tree. So if people want to go find them on their Instagram, you can. And then you're posting like everything you're up to on Instagram too, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's me. That's my
And
mug on
that's
there.
him. I love this picture. So when you guys are looking, this is what you're looking for. How do you pronounce it?
Inspector. So like Inspector Gadget, but it's
Oh,
like Inspector as in ghost, so Inspector. So it's kind of a bit of a play on words, but yeah, we're kind of we're here. If you've got a story, get in touch. Yeah.
yes. And I'm gonna have all of Tom's live links at the bottom of the podcast and of the YouTube video. So please go check out his podcast. Don't forget to rate it, because as you guys are rating it all 5 stars, then people can find it. It goes to the top of the list, which is
Please.
fantastic. I like to encourage people to leave comments, tell them how much you love the podcast. And yeah, so thank you so much for being with us. And thank you, Dana Louise from Australia, for being with us too today.
I've had a
Thanks,
blast.
Tom,
Thank you,
and thanks.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Goodbye,
having me,
everybody.
Maria.
Thank you.
Lovely to